It is said that the following books are the thinnest books in the world: detailed explanation of British recipes, encyclopedia of German jokes, collection of Chinese men's football victories, detailed discussion on Korean sportsmanship, list of Italian war heroes and American history. There is the thinnest and the thickest. The corresponding thickest books should be a brief introduction to Chinese cuisine, the complete record of American hegemony, the inside story of Chinese football, annotation of Korean face skin anatomy, and compendium of Chinese historical materials. Since the birth of human beings, no civilization has valued history as much as the Chinese civilization. At the latest in the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties, China set up full-time historians and established a complete system for compiling history. The central government should revise the history, the localities should revise the local chronicles, and the families should revise the genealogy. If there is something glorious about the ancestors or a major change happens in the family, it must be written in the family tree. The school has a school history museum, and some time ago, a teacher was writing department history. My latest experience is that our class held a small gathering a few days ago, and someone took the initiative to act as a secretary and recorded everyone's speeches. This will become the first-hand material of our class history. Because of this, China has voluminous historical materials, both official and folk. Compared with the West, the amount of historical materials in China is overwhelming. Even India's study of its own ancient history must be based on Chinese historical materials. How amazing is China's history? Thousands of years later, we can clearly know when and where, what kind of banquet was held, what each participant said, and what consequences it caused. In the past, we were always criticized by the public, which shows that our literary and art circles are conservative and incapable of innovation, and they are always historical dramas and historical films. If you look at people in the United States, they are either modern dramas or sci-fi blockbusters. Whether the Chinese literary and art circles will innovate is not discussed yet. The problem is that if the United States wants to make historical films, it must have a history. You asked Americans to make historical films, isn't that the same as asking Liliana Ying to talk about the real feelings of married life? Chinese people attach importance to history, fundamentally because of the traditional belief of respecting heaven and ancestors. The reason why the past dynasties have to compile history, in the final analysis, is to sum up the experience and lessons of the predecessors, and finally realize the use of history as a mirror. Infiltrated by thousands of years of tradition, the Chinese have formed a unique way of thinking, expression, and behavior. No one cares more about historical evaluation than the Chinese. Even if they can't make a name in history, they must not leave a bad reputation for thousands of years. If you want to have a good historical evaluation, you must bravely shoulder the historical responsibility. Chinese people like to turn to history and learn wisdom from history no matter what happens or what happens. For example, seeing South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol singing to the American rare sect, someone immediately dug up such a piece of history. It is recorded in historical records, biography of Lien Po Lin Xiangrua, that in order to humiliate King Zhao, King Qin asked King Zhao to play a harp for him, and then asked the historian to record, on a certain date, King Qin and King Zhao had a drink, and King Zhao drummed Essie. Facing the insult of Qin state, Lin Xiangrua of Zhao state stood up and risked his life to force King Qin to hit the fu. If you don't hit the fu, I will splash your blood all over your body. King Qin was overwhelmed by Lin Xiangrua's aura, so he had no choice but to hit him. Then Lin Xiangrua also asked the official historian to record, on a certain date, the king of Qin played fu for the king of Zhao. At this time, this period of history was dug out, and there was a stark contrast between Lin Xiangrua, who was strong, and Yin Ziyu, who was servile and servile. In order to please Mei Di, Yin Ziyu did not hesitate to betray Korea's national character and completely betrayed her ancestors and history. She will definitely be nailed to the pillar of shame. In the future history books, it will definitely be recorded like this: on the 7th day of the 3rd month of the Kuei-Mao year, Mai Zizong met Han Wanjiao and asked him to sing with drums and strings before the banquet, and you happily followed him. Mai Zizong then ordered the official historian to write, in a certain year and a certain month, the emperor ordered Han Wan to sing with drums and strings. The heavy history has also affected the way of expression of the Chinese people. The Chinese like to use the past to satirize the present, use the past to describe the present, and support the past to prove the present. Properly citing historical allusions can arouse strong resonance and recognition, and achieve unexpected expressive effects. Mao Zedong loved books like his life, and history books are the most. He also advised people to read more history books. He said, "We are historicists, and we tell everyone about history. Only by telling history can we convince people." In the United States, if you want to use the past to satirize the present, you must first have the past, and if you don't have the past, you can talk about Jingba. South Korea doesn't have many Jingba, but South Korea will make fakes. If it doesn't work, it will steal. The Chinese analyze and evaluate the gains and losses of politics, and they also like to start from a historical perspective. For example, our policy of keeping a low profile and keeping a low profile is often compared with the recuperation policy of the Western Han Dynasty. After recuperating, it must be the aggressive and comprehensive attack of Emperor Wu. Similarly, when we look at the United States, we must also like to start from a historical perspective. For the analysis of the current situation in the United States, there are already scripts from the late Qing Dynasty and the late Ming Dynasty. Today, Dan Zone presents a new script 5 Random Beauty. Comparing with the history of China, it should be the Wuhuliuan Hua during the Jin, Southern and Northern dynasties. During the Western Jin Dynasty, many nomadic peoples outside the Great Wall took advantage of the rebellion of the 8 kings of the Western Jin Dynasty and the weakening of national power, and successively established many non-Han regimes. The 5 Hus refer to the Xiannu, Jia, Xianbei, Didi, Jiang, etc. These regimes conquered each other, the wars continued, the population in the north decreased sharply, and the culture withered. This period was one of the darkest moments in Chinese history. The root cause of the 5 disorders is that the pace of national integration cannot keep up with the speed of immigration. And now the United States is also facing new problems brought about by new immigrants. Mr. Dan calls it the 5 random beauties, who is relative to Hua. The 5 Hus in the United States are Anglo-Saxon whites, including Jews, African Americans, Hispanics, Indians, and Middle Eastern. 2. The confrontation between black and white, the wound that the United States cannot heal. For a long time, the image of black people in the United States has not been very good, and the crime rate is very high. Blacks in the United States only account for 13% of the entire American population, but blacks account for 40% of the prison population in the United States, and blacks contract more than half of the violent crimes in the United States. However, this is only the result, only the appearance of American social problems. The deep-seated reason is that black Americans have been enslaved, oppressed, and discriminated against by whites for a long time. They cannot get a good education and are firmly locked at the bottom of society. For example, I dare say that the corruption rate of Chinese farmers is 0. In the same way, Mr. Dan has no possibility of any job crime, because I have no job. The same goes for black Americans. It's also robbery, except that white Americans rob inside the counter and black people rob outside the counter. White people in the United States rob the Bank of China's crude oil treasures for tens of billions at a time. I bet that after black Americans were captured from Africa and came to the Americas, the total amount of robberies was not so much. If black Americans are beasts, aren't the Anglo-Saxon whites in the United States beasts in clothes? We have seen that the crime rate of black Americans is more than 5 times that of white Americans, and we should also see that the incidence of poverty among black Americans is 15 times that of white Americans. In addition, the new crown death rate of blacks is nearly 3 times that of whites. Although the United States passed legislation in 1964 to achieve equality between black and white on paper, the discrimination against blacks by white Americans has a long history and is deeply rooted in the bone marrow. Divide and confrontation. Blacks have a high crime rate, so white police officers will be more vigilant when facing blacks, and they are likely to shoot in advance. The blacks will think that it is the white police who discriminate against them with colored glasses, and will hate whites even more, and even shoot before the police shoot. The conclusion is that blacks in the United States are victims of racial discrimination. From the perspective of watching the excitement, it is wrong. From the perspective of supporting the just cause of blacks, we should support blacks in the United States to take up arms and bravely stand up against oppression and discrimination. To drive white people off the counter. The problem of black and white is a chronic disease of American society and one of the sources of chaos in the United States. As the economic problems in the United States become more and more serious, and black people buy more and more for $0, the opposition between black and white will only become more acute. In the internet age, all kinds of news of black and white opposition have made American society more torn apart. Floyd was killed by a white police officer on his knees. June 2020, a handcuffed black man was crushed and killed by 7 police officers. March 2023, a black man in New York was strangled by a white veteran on the subway. May 2023, black and white cops were shot in battle. May 2023. The problem of black and white opposition in the United States is an old-fashioned problem. It is just psoriasis that plagues the United States, and it is troublesome but not fatal. Because the birth rate of blacks in the United States is not too high, only slightly higher than that of whites and Asians. 3. Latin American immigrants devour the social foundation of the United States. Deadly are Latin Americans, including Mexicans, Indians, and illegal immigrants from all over the world. The Latin Americanization of the lower society in the United States is inevitable. On the one hand, the birth rate of Hispanics is extremely high, and on the other hand, there is a large influx of illegal immigrants from Latin America. Around 1970, white Americans accounted for 83.5%, blacks accounted for 11.1%, Hispanics accounted for 4.4%, and Asians accounted for 0.8%. But by 2010, white Americans accounted for 63.7%, blacks accounted for 12.6%, Hispanics accounted for 16.3%, and Asians accounted for 4.9%. By 2021, whites accounted for 62.1%, blacks accounted for 13.2%, Hispanics rose to 17.4%, and Asians accounted for 5.4%. Among newborns, whites account for only 48%. It can be judged that by 2050, whites in the United States will be less than 50%, and Hispanics will exceed 25%. And in some states, Hispanics have become too large to be ignored. In 2020, Hispanics reached 39% in California, 39.2% in Texas, and 23.8% in Florida. What is even more alarming is that the proportion is still increasing rapidly. These statistics may be deceptive, because more Latin American immigrants are illegal immigrants. According to USCIS statistics, the number of illegal immigrants in the United States may be between 9 million and 20 million. In fact, these data are not accurate. Because in the 2022 fiscal year, U.S. law enforcement agencies arrested illegal immigrants on the U.S. Mexico border to exceed the 2 million mark, breaking the record set in the 2021 fiscal year. This is still arrested. Is there anyone who has not been arrested? In addition to the successful smuggling, it is estimated that in 2022, 4 to 5 million people will smuggle into the United States, and most of these people are Latin Americans. This statistic is too scary. It will be 40 to 50 million in 10 years, and 100 million in 20 years. These illegal immigrants are the biggest threat to the United States. Since they are illegal immigrants, they have no way of legal employment, so they can only work illegally. The employment scope is very narrow, and they are mostly concentrated in catering, decoration, takeaway and other industries. There used to be a joke that said that washing dishes in the United States can earn more than 10,000 yuan a month, which is actually true. I used to wash dishes in a Chinese restaurant for a day, earning more than $100, which is 600 to 700 yuan in RMB, and more than $3,000 a month, equivalent to 20,000 RMB. But it is no longer possible, and a large number of Latin Americans are pouring in. Restaurant owners are very smart. You just negotiated $100 a day on your side, and suddenly a Mexican came over there and offered to do it for $50. He is more hardworking and courteous than you. If you want to make a lot of money, you have to take risks, such as drug trafficking. In this regard, Hispanics have an advantage. The drug industry in many Latin American countries has formed a complete industrial chain, and the drugs they produce are continuously being trafficked to the United States. Latin America produces more than 95% of the world's cocaine and marijuana. These drugs are mainly exported to the United States. The United States is the world's largest drug consumer, with 5% of the world's population consuming more than 60% of the world's drugs. There is no harm where there is no trade, and the booming drug trade in Latin America and the United States means more and more harm. According to 2021 data, of the approximately 280 million Americans ages 12 and older, 31.9 million are drug users. A total of 107,622 people will die from overdose in the United States in 2021, a year-on-year increase of 15%. According to this growth rate, the number of deaths in 2022 should be around 123,000. We will wait and see. Drug use is definitely not a personal matter, because once a person takes drugs, he will be completely reduced to a slave to sin. Addicts are either taking drugs, or they are raising money to take drugs. Due to the high price of drugs, addicts quickly lose their fortunes and start to commit crimes. According to previous surveys by the US government, 20% of drug money comes from robbery, 45% from drug trafficking, 17% from prostitution, and 12% from theft. All in all, 94% of drug money comes from criminal offenses. San Francisco, California, USA is a famous capital of technological innovation, but its law and order is notoriously chaotic. It is known as the capital of car smashing and robbery, and as many as 30,000 to 40,000 vehicles are smashed and robbed a year. In other words, 10,000 cars are smashed every 3 months. In order to prevent the vehicles from being smashed, many people had to put notices on the windows, saying that there was nothing inside. But it is still possible to be smashed. First, they do not believe that there is nothing inside. Second, they may not know how to read. Later, people learned to be smart, and simply unlocked the car, and attached a text telling them to use the door or roll down the window directly. There are also some SUV owners who simply leave their trunks open, waiting for car thieves to inspect them. I have to sigh, the US Emperor is the US Emperor, and it really does not close the door at night, and the car does not close the door. Most car thieves are drug addicts. California, especially San Francisco, is a hard-hit area for drug crimes and a paradise for addicts. Scattered syringes can be seen everywhere. In addition to theft and robbery, there are also violent crimes such as highway robbery, armed robbery, and murder. In the early morning of April 4th this year, Bob Lee, an American technology leader, currency giant, technology company CTO, and billionaire, was assassinated on the streets of San Francisco at the age of 43. Therefore, drugs will not only lead to personal destruction, but also cause a series of social problems, including family breakdown and violent crime. In order to expand their economic base, drug dealers will try their best to get more people infected with drugs. It is not that the US government is ignorant of the dangers of drugs, but it is already powerless. Trump is a true patriot of the United States. He realized the seriousness of illegal immigration from Latin America, so he strongly advocated the construction of a border wall. However, the United States is rotten, not to mention inefficient, and cutting corners is too serious. In addition to Trump, American politicians, especially the Democratic Party, dare not offend illegal immigrants or drug addicts, and drug control has become an industrial chain for everyone to divide taxpayer funds. Although the drug epidemic in the United States is serious, and the annual drug consumption exceeds $200 billion, the annual cost of the US government to control drug abuse exceeds $270 billion, 2017. That is to say, drug trafficking is an industrial chain, and drug control is also an industrial chain. Everyone does not violate the river water. For Latin Americans, because the economy of their country has been devastated by the United States, it is dangerous for a large number of people to have no jobs in their own country. This immigrant army is unstoppable. Even if you set a 10,000 card point, it is useless. What to do if you are caught, and you have to take care of food, drink, and shelter? There is no place to repatriate, and you don't have any ID on you. 4. Indian elites are occupying Wall Street and Silicon Valley. Illegal immigrants from Latin America, and their illegal industrial chain, are destroying the bottom society of the United States in their own way. And the Indians are destroying the American elite in their own way. Among the pillars of American hegemony is the core high-tech hegemony. With the blessing of high technology, the United States has occupied the most lucrative high-end industry in the global division of labor, providing strong support for the U.S. economic hegemony. With the blessing of high technology, the military power of the United States has become extremely powerful. For example, the first high-tech war, the Gulf War, was enough to shock the whole world, and the Kosovo War achieved true zero casualties. The secret to the long-term prosperity of American science and technology is to desperately harvest the world's top talents, while shouting that technology has no borders, while giving relatively generous treatment. But this kind of treatment is just a drop in the bucket for capitalists. According to the survey data, among the top talents in the US market, only 31% are from the United States, while the proportion of top talents from China is as high as 27%. Year data. However, as Sino-US relations continue to deteriorate, the United States increasingly distrusts Chinese students and graduates, and sees everyone as a spy. But the United States still needs someone to engage in scientific research, management, and code writing, so it desperately recruits Indians. In 2022, the US government issued 125,000 study visas to Indian students, which means that there will be more Indian students studying in the US than any other country. During the same period, the number of student visas to China decreased by 30%, to only 56,000. In addition to desperately issuing student visas to India, the United States is also desperately issuing green cards to India. In 2021, an average of 10,000 cards will be issued to Indians every 40 days. However, there are fewer and fewer Chinese people, and it takes more than 80 days to issue 10,000 cards. The Indians are also rolling inside, and the asking price is getting lower and lower. For example, the annual salary of a Chinese executive needs $1 million, while that of India only costs 500,000 or less. So there is a saying that India is rich in CEOs, or other executives. In fact, it is not that the Chinese are not united, nor is it that the Chinese are not capable enough. The most important thing is that the Indians are cheap, and the capitalists are the most sophisticated. After superimposing political factors, the Chinese are even more excluded and can only travel westward in clothes. As for India, since the country does not have a corresponding industrial chain, the brain drain will be very serious. Inspired by the slogan of the United States that science and technology knows no borders, more and more Indian elites will travel across the ocean to fill the talent gap in the United States. There are currently more than 4.5 million Indians in the United States. On the other hand, as China grows stronger, the treatment of technological elites will also increase, and the treatment gap between China and the United States will be further eliminated. Coupled with the political discrimination in the United States, more and more Chinese elites will return to China for development. So the United States is now in an embarrassing situation. The black-white confrontation has intensified. The lower class is gradually being swallowed up by Hispanics, Latinization, and the upper class is gradually being occupied by Indians, Indianization. This is a phenomenon in which bad money drives out good money in the field of population and talent. Anglo-Saxons, including Jews, blacks, Latin Americans, Indians, Middle Easterners, and other random beauties are being staged. Although it is a very slow process, it belongs to the series in our lifetime. We will wait and see. China announced sanctions on the import of rare earths from the United States, and the US military's industrial chain is extremely dependent on rare earths. Therefore, this behavior was described by foreign media as a catastrophe. So why is China blocking rare earths from entering the United States? How will this affect the United States? The importance of rare earths. First, let's take a brief look at rare earth elements, a group of mineral elements that are vital to modern industrial and technological applications. Due to their unique physical and chemical properties, they are widely used in high-tech, energy, military and environmental fields. The application of rare earths in the fields of electronic products, automobile manufacturing, green energy, national defense, and communication technology makes them indispensable key materials in modern society. Rare earth elements are used in a wide range of applications, including magnetic materials, optical glasses, catalysts, high-temperature superconducting materials, and permanent magnet materials. For example, rare earth elements such as dysprosium, neodymium, and terbium are widely used to make strong magnetic materials used in permanent magnet motors in equipment such as electric vehicles and wind turbines. Rare earth elements such as lanthanum, cerium, and yttrium play a key role in automobile exhaust catalysts. Rare earths are also used in the production of phosphors, efficient lighting, and display technology, among other things. Although rare earth elements are crucial in many key applications, the global supply status presents certain challenges and imbalances. China is currently the world's largest producer of rare earths, with rich rare earth deposits and advanced production technology. Moreover, China occupies a dominant position in the rare earth industry and has a huge influence on the global rare earth supply. Rare earth resources in other countries are relatively limited, so they are highly dependent on China for the supply of rare earths. This reliance on a single source of supply has raised global concerns about the security of rare earth supplies. Any policy changes, export restrictions, or international trade disputes related to China's rare earth industry could have a significant impact on the global rare earth supply chain. In order to reduce their dependence on China's rare earths, some countries have begun to develop their own rare earth mineral resources or seek rare earth substitutes. However, the mining and extraction process of rare earths is very complicated and expensive, and the factors of environmental protection and sustainable development need to be considered at the same time. Globally, diversification of rare earth supply, cooperation in resource development, and promotion of technological innovation are all key factors to ensure the security of rare earth supply. International cooperation and policy coordination are essential to ensure the stability and sustainability of rare earth supply chains. In addition, promoting the recovery and recycling of rare earths is also an important measure to reduce the demand for rare earth resources. U.S. sanctions against China. In recent years, the United States has imposed a series of sanctions on China, which are aimed at putting pressure on China's economic, trade and technological fields, and using it as a diplomatic and economic tool to promote its own interests and policy goals. Since 2018, the United States has imposed a series of trade restrictive measures against China, including imposing tariffs on tens of billions of dollars of Chinese goods. This led to an escalation of trade tensions between the U.S. and China, with widespread repercussions for the economies of both countries. At the same time, the U.S. Department of Commerce put some Chinese companies on the Entity List, restricting their trade with U.S. companies. The U.S. government has also banned its domestic companies from cooperating with some Chinese technology companies, especially in fields involving 5G communication equipment and artificial intelligence technology. This includes sanctions on Chinese companies such as Huawei and ZTE, restricting their activities in the U.S. market. In addition, the United States has imposed a series of trade restrictions and sanctions on China targeting specific industries and fields. That includes tariffs and anti-dumping measures on products such as Chinese steel, aluminum, and solar panels. Finally, the U.S. government restricts their activities in the U.S. financial system by sanctioning individual Chinese officials and companies. The sanctions have sparked tensions between the U.S. and China and have had a major impact on economic, trade and technological cooperation between the two countries. Sanctions have not only affected the international business and development of Chinese companies, but have also created uncertainties in the global supply chain and the international trading system. However, the sanctions have also raised controversy and questioned U.S. policy. Some people believe that these sanctions may lead to escalation of trade conflicts, damage the stability of the global economy, and have a negative impact. Repay the other with the way of the other. In the face of all kinds of actions made by the United States against China, China has also made a strong counterattack. Just recently, the Ministry of Commerce of China issued a statement that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, the two major military giants in the United States, were also included in the Entity List, which means that they lost the qualification to import rare earths from the Chinese market. Once the incident was reported, foreign media expressed that the U.S. military industry would face a catastrophe. The sanctions imposed by the Ministry of Commerce of China are also a strong response to the previous trade war launched by the United States. During the Sino-US trade war, the United States imposed a series of trade restrictions and tariffs on China, which had a huge impact on the Chinese economy. By sanctioning U.S. imports of rare earths, China responded with equivalent trade restrictions, exerting economic pressure on the U.S. and demonstrating countermeasures. In addition, rare earths are important raw materials for high-tech and advanced manufacturing industries, and are widely used in electronic products, green energy, national defense, and communications. China has rich rare earth resources and mature production technology. By sanctioning the import of rare earths from the United States, China can protect its own rare earth resources, ensure a stable supply of the domestic industrial chain, and improve economic security. By sanctioning rare earth imports, China can also increase its leverage in trade negotiations. Rare earth resources play an important role in the global supply chain, and China's monopoly position enables it to exert influence on the global rare earth market. Through sanctions, China hopes to influence the negotiation atmosphere and strive for more favorable trade agreements and conditions. At the same time, the control of rare earth resources can promote China's breakthroughs in rare earth-related technological innovation and industrial upgrading. By restricting the export of rare earths, China can encourage local enterprises to increase investment in the research and development and application of rare earth substitutes, reduce dependence on imported rare earths, and improve their own technological innovation capabilities. Finally, the mining and extraction process of rare earths has a large impact on the environment. By sanctioning rare earth imports, China can reduce its own rare earth mining and promote the goals of environmental protection and sustainable development. U.S. rare earth dependence and vulnerability. It can be said that our country's move directly hit the main artery of the United States. Because the U.S. military industry chain is highly dependent on rare earths, this makes it extremely vulnerable to the supply of rare earths. The specifics are as follows. Aspect. Rare earth elements are used extensively in U.S. military technology and weapons systems. Rare earths play a key role in the manufacture of precision missiles, radar systems, aerospace equipment, and precision weapons, among other things. Among them, some rare earth elements such as dysprosium, terbium, and neodymium have an irreplaceable position in magnetic materials, high-temperature superconducting materials, and optical fiber communications. The U.S. defense industry relies on the rare earth supply chain, which includes the mining, refining, processing, and manufacturing of rare earths. The scarcity and complex production process of rare earth elements means that it is difficult to establish an alternative supply chain in a short period of time, so the dependence on imported rare earths is high. The most important thing is that the supply of rare earths in the United States mainly depends on a few countries, including China. China has a dominant position in the global rare earth market, accounting for more than 80% of global rare earth production. China's current restrictions on rare earth exports to the United States will have a serious impact on the U.S. military industry, leading to supply shortages and production interruptions. At the same time, the market price of rare earths fluctuates greatly, and due to unstable supply or political factors, the price may rise sharply. This will bring uncertainty and cost pressure to the U.S. military industrial chain, which may affect military R&D and equipment procurement plans. Finally, the widespread application of rare earths in some key military technologies limits the technological innovation capabilities of the U.S. military industry. Without access to rare earth elements, the U.S. could risk falling behind in technology, compromising military superiority and national security. Epilogue. To sum up, under the various sanctions imposed by the United States on China, China has also made a strong response to it. Rare earth elements play a key role in U.S. military technology and weapons systems, and the U.S. is highly dependent on supplies from a handful of countries, especially China. This dependence makes the U.S. military industrial chain face huge vulnerabilities and risks in the supply of rare earths. The issue of rare earths is not only related to economic and military fields, but also involves the balance of global cooperation and competition. Through in-depth research and multi-party cooperation, the international community can find ways to solve the problems of rare earth dependence and supply security, and achieve sustainable development of the rare earth industry and a stable global supply chain. Only through cooperation and innovation can we ensure the sustainable use of rare earth resources and contribute to future scientific and technological progress and national security. What is your opinion on this matter? Welcome to leave a message in the comment area for discussion.